Alienation, an ideological concept used by Marx in his early works, as regarding by partisans of these works as the key concepts of Marxism. Marx derived the term from Feuerbach's anthropology, where it denotes the state of man, and society, where the essence of man is only present to him in a distorted form of God, or of a God, which, although man created in the image of his essence, the species being, appears to him as an external, pre-existing creator. Marx used this concept to criticize the state and the economy as confiscating the real self-determining labor of men in the same way. In his later works, however, the term appears very rarely, and where it does, it is either used ironically or with a different conceptual content, in capital, for instance. This is a definition of alienation from Marx by Louis Althusserian for Marx. What is going on, everybody? It is Master Signified Commodities over here, about to freaking drop some exchange value on your ass. We're talking about Marxism today, my favorite. Yes, you didn't think we were going to go there, right? No, we are. We're about to drop the Marxism bars on you. I'm about to freaking drop the ether like Nas did with Jay-Z. Nah, but for real, we're going to go over some early Marx, the economic manuscripts of 1844. Maybe in the future I might go over more chapters, but specifically his popular essay or manuscript, Estranged Labor, which is, again, his most popular one. If everybody's heard of Marx besides Manifesto or Capital, they know about Alienation, right? And why did I read Althusser? Well, I find Althusser very useful. I find him very useful in the way that he structures the works of Marxism, whether or not you agree with the epistemological break. Most people only know the epistemological break as like a historical, theoretical concept, whereas in his later works, later works of Althusser, he wants to locate as a structural epistemological thing in regards to capital being contingent rather than something located in a historicism. So Marx breaking away from his historicism and more into a structural thinker in his eyes. But for this, the epistemological break is away from the early humanistic writings and the sort of Hegelianism that Louis Althusser sees into a more concrete, mature, scientific thinker, revolutionary thinker of the human sciences. So, again, we are not going to focus on what Althusser has to say about alienation, and he thinks that it's very much clouded in this Feuerbachian anthropology, humanism. But we could still use alienation, even as Marxists today. I think alienation does not have to necessarily tie into a sort of humanistic interpretation. If we look at Lacan, he's using the veils of alienation all the time, and Lacan says that psychoanalysis cannot be a humanism because of death drive in Seminar 2. Yet we still use alienation in the form of the mirror stage, in the secondary narcissisms, and these veils of alienation that are talked about in, or separation and alienation in Seminar 11. So we could still apply a sort of psychoanalytic Lacanian lens of alienation in the recuperation of the early Marx and still maintain that Althusserian structure and approach. So, what is alienation, right? Besides what I defined, how does Marx think of it? Well, he thinks that, in the sense, using Feuerbach, the way that we see ourselves in the inverted image that we make via God, like the God as the creator, we put all the qualities that we have in ourselves into the God. Well, in a sense, we're always alienated so long as we are in the world, right? So long as we're species being, there's some form of alienation that we have. When we're creating a piece of artwork, we're creating like a philosophical project. I create this content right here. There is an alienation which my power is put into this object, this work. But then I could reify it, identify it with myself, because then I'm developing myself as a species being in the world. An artisan, a craftsman, a mechanic who fixes cars, an engineer, a musician. all these things. There are these minor forms of alienation that exist, but in a sense, it's sort of created because we're projecting ourselves outward into the world, um, and we are developing ourselves through our works, through praxis, not necessarily through concepts. Although the concepts can become involved the more we develop our craft. What alienation has to deal with Marx is the fact that with the division of labor in capitalism and with the instantiation of private property under capitalism, that the worker gets lowered down or reduced down to the level of commodities. He's forced to sell his time and value for a wage, his work for a wage, and he never gets the profits for it. With the division of labor, if someone was really great at, let's say, building, handcrafted tables or something. Now, in carpentry or woodwork, the division of labor is like one person, a team of people will cut down trees and use those raw materials to make wood, in which they would sell to a company, in which the seller would exchange that in a relation with this company, this impersonal company, and then the manager or owner will then divide these tools and raw materials to a set of workers to create a bunch of tables, and not necessarily all of them are working on their own individual table. They may only work on some parts. Maybe some will work on sanding down, and the other person will work on actually building it, and then you have another team that's going to polish or coat it. I'm not a carpenter, but you get the idea. It's like the division of labor separates and isolates one homogeneous form of art, I would call art, or a form of labor, which is a part of man's essence of being in the world, and then just divides it and alienates this power for the sake of capital and profit. And this is what capitalism is developing with all types of industries, taking away people's craft, taking away people's essence, and giving it to them in a distorted form. He says when they are at work, they're not themselves, and when they are home, they are themselves. But it's like in his early chapter in this economic manuscripts of 1844, he says that the state of political economy reduces man to a mouth and a stomach. Pretty much the mammon of capitalists and the capitalist system makes workers depraved, tired, of course alienated, but in this reduction to the bodily drives, they're nothing but just the stomach and mouth, and the only thing they have time for are just like in leisure time now in late stage capitalism, watching Netflix, satisfy their sense of boredom, drinking to feel something, eating shitty food just to feed themselves because they just want something that's quick. They don't have time to cook, or doing drugs just to get a sense of excitation. These are all modern forms of alienation that we could experience today, and it has systemic causes. It does exist in the social field, in the social metabolism of the capitalist structure, in the base and the superstructure. The base being the capitalistic mode of production, the superstructure being the state and the social relations and all these other forms of commodity exchanges which create a social life. What Marx is saying is that not only is there this alienation of like a man's labor, but alienation has different forms for him. Not just labor like I explained in the division of labor. The commodity is something that's outside, something that's alienated from him because his power is taken away for profit. There's also alienation of self. People are always alienated, but they think, and this is due to the fact that they're alienated from what the structural mechanisms are. That I just need to pull up myself up my bootstraps. Maybe I just need to go to the gym more, man. Like maybe I just need to feel better by, working out, getting the sick pump. Maybe I just need to start running and look healthy because I'm kind of getting fat. Or maybe I should start investing in a business because that would make me feel better. All these things that they could contribute to something that they aren't doing rather than something that is the cause and result of habitual division of labor, alienated labor, and the fact that they don't see it. And this could go into like even my last video I made on ideology. But yeah, this ties in. So we shouldn't see these as mutually exclusive. We shouldn't try to be category simps or like, well, actually, the difference between alienation and ideology are two separate things. But no, we should see them intersecting somehow, especially as Zizekian's alienation or ideology is fantasy, right? Structured like desire, and desire is a desire of the other. And within this structure of the grasp of desire, there are alienations happening. So, and we should see this in the capitalist discourse. Not only is there this alienation of self because we don't know who we are, because every time we reflect in, we have to project outwards. People like Sartre even talk about this, and like being in itself, being for self, bad faith, self-reflective negativity, and then alienation from the social relations, because everything is just like mediated by exchange. The fact that you don't really know the person fully because it's always mediated by like some type of like empty speech. It's mediated by social relations where like, oh, you only know that person because like they're the regular cashier at the grocery store or at the liquor store where I buy my alcohol because I'm so alienated that I need to get a sick buzz, or oh yeah, I see this person at the gym. But it's always mediated by some type of structure, so you're never really seeing and again, I'm not to say like who they really are, like as in, oh, like they have this core intrinsic value to themselves, but something that isn't really mediated by some type of spectacle of capitalism. You're not really seeing, nobody's really engaged in a social relation which brings some type of like community, like creative production. It's always something of investing in like hyper individuality, something of identifying and signifying with the clothes you wear that are like part of the consumer society. Seems like it's always in a imaginary relationship of images and spectacles and trying to assert some type of like mode of mastery in the psychoanalytic sense. So yeah, I'm tying in a lot of ideas. I'm not sticking strictly to the Marxist way of saying this, but hopefully this gives you an idea, because there are just more than just the social aspects of it. It's also, part of the structure itself. But then you have, so we said alienation from, your labor, alienation from yourself, alienation from the social world, and then you have alienation from the world itself. Because now you don't really see things as natural. And this is also up for debate, because some say that, oh, like for Zizek, Marx saw nature or the species or the container of the species being as this like homogeneous, natural thing, harmonious. Zizek would argue different, that nature is just all this chaotic thing. But what we could at least get at is the fact that everything is seen as raw material and resources for capitalist reproduction. The forests and the trees in the forest are seen as something that we could use for anything in the wood industry, or to create paper, since everything is about black and white. We need paper to sign it. People will say like, oh, well, no, we should do a digital copy. Doesn't matter. Computers break down all the time. Computers are slow. Government jobs, it's like, this is another point of alienation. It's like you're alienated from your work because you don't know what the hell you're doing, because you're just sitting here like at a computer trying to get this paperwork process or administration, but you have the slowest government computer. So therefore, it's like, oh, the computer's shut down. I'm just going to do the paperwork version and route this up. So you still need trees for receipts whenever you do have transactions. So this is like also part of the contradictions of capitalism, but I don't want to stray off from that. But the point is like, oh, a forest, nice, beautiful forest is seen as resources. one day you'll see a nice piece of land, the next day you'll see, like, I don't know, an IKEA or a whole shopping center. Like, there aren't really things as nature in themselves, because it's all, in a sense, potential for capital. And this is what Marx is trying to get at, is that the alienation of nature is not seen that way. But yet, we still have natural settings. It's not like things aren't really like this dystopian, like, technocratic society. There are still aspects where you could cathartic. You could go on trails, but still, these trails are man-made. They help you escape, and be like, oh, I just need to escape from my job and just be one with nature. And, I just need to find my zen. But when you go out there, you see a bunch of other people doing the same thing, but you're not interacting with them. They're just like, you let them do their own thing. You kind of give them their space, and you like see them, taking pictures of the scenery, and it's like, let me just get away from them. You don't say hi. You're not interacting with them. So you see the time between the social relations that are alienated, and also the relation of nature, which is alienated. It's like people go to nature for consumption rather than being contained in a part of it, or a part of, need I say, Dasein. Like, people are just using it for consumption in themselves, because that's part of the reified aspect of capitalism in its alienation. It's like you are so caught up in the movement of it and its ideology that you don't even realize that you're doing it in these forms of escapism that you call, being one with nature. Going into a cabin in the woods, you have to rent out that cabin using money, and you are staying in something that's not yours, but is allowed through, whether it's like a state-owned, like, going into Sequoia. You get a cabin out there. Yeah, it's natural, it's beautiful, but there's still relations of production that are controlling that. So the big point to take away of alienation, it's not only affects somebody on a subjective level, it also has objective structures, and also produced by the social and economic mechanisms, even political as well. So that's the breakdown of alienation in its full. It's not a long chapter. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's also something that maybe you could misunderstand, but also not see how it ties together with all these other concepts in Marxism. But yeah, that's about it. I hope you liked this video. Remember, enjoy your symptom.